Before humans had language, before tools were sharpened, before someone figured out pants, they had danger. And it didn't wait politely. It came from above, below, beside, and within. Every day was a test. There were no safety nets, no backup plans, and no one to sue. Just survival or not. If you're listening to this in bed, with a soft blanket and a ceiling fan humming gently above you, congratulations. You are already safer than most of your ancestors were in their entire lifetimes. Back then, the world wasn't trying to kill you. It just didn't care if you survived. The forest didn't move for you. The wind didn't check your body temperature. The animals didn't negotiate. And the ground didn't warn you when it was about to disappear under your feet. Our earliest ancestors didn't have science. Not in the way we think of it today. They had something much simpler. Instincts. And instincts, in many ways, were a great backup system. But they were only reliable when you were sharp. And sometimes, when you're tired, hungry, or distracted by a bird that might be food, instincts have a way of failing you. Every day, every breath they took was borrowed. You didn't know if the pile of leaves in the corner of the cave hid a snake. You didn't know if the water from that stream would make your stomach twist, or if the tree you decided to rest under was about to crash down on you in the middle of your nap. Sometimes death came quickly. A slip, a fall. One moment you were standing. The next, you weren't. Other times death was slow, creeping in like a shadow, catching you off guard when you least expected it. It was like that with everything, even something as simple as food. You ate something you found and hoped it wasn't your last meal. Rest wasn't safe either. Closing your eyes in the wrong place or for too long meant you might not wake up. Predators didn't knock. They didn't care how tired you were. They just waited. They waited for you to slow down, to stop moving, to be less than you were when you were hunting, running, or gathering. There were no guarantees, not in numbers, not in daylight, and certainly not in a cave. Caves collapsed, rocks fell, neighbors fought, and if someone ate the wrong food and they got sick, there was no medicine, just distance. Distance from the rest of the tribe who might have to deal with it. You might think that life back then made people stronger, and in many ways, it did. But in other ways, it just made them more cautious, more careful. The ones who weren't careful enough didn't last long enough to pass on their stories. People talk about bravery, but bravery wasn't something they performed. It wasn't a show. It wasn't for glory. It was something necessary. The only other option was staying still. And even then, that wasn't always safe either. Sometimes staying still was the worst thing you could do. Sometimes death came from something small. Something so tiny that it might not have seemed worth worrying about. A cut, a scratch, a thorn in the foot. And yet, those small things could cause infections. And infections? Well, infections didn't wait. They just got worse. And then sometimes death came quickly. One wrong step, a branch breaking underfoot, a sudden shift in the ground, the kind of death that didn't give you a chance to scream. No warning, just silence, where you used to be. And yet, through it all, life kept going. People adapted. They learned. They learned which plants to eat and which to avoid. They learned which caves to stay away from. They learned which animals were safer to stay clear of. And they learned how to keep going, even when they knew danger was never far. And yet, through it all, life kept going. People adapted. They learned. They learned which plants to eat and which to avoid. They learned which caves to stay away from. They learned which animals were safer to stay clear of. And they learned how to keep going, even when they knew danger was never far. This chapter, this part of our story, isn't about a single death. It's about the constant presence of death. It was always there, quiet, constant, and ready to strike. But still, humans lived. They kept moving. They kept pushing forward. If you've ever wondered why fear is so deeply wired into the human brain, this is why. The fear of falling. The fear of the dark. The fear of strange sounds in the night. These fears weren't irrational. They were inherited. They were built into us by those who came before us. So tonight, as you lie back and feel safe under your roof, with your blanket wrapped around you, just remember, the world outside may still be wild, but inside this story, you are safe. You have centuries of survival behind you. If someone long ago hadn't dodged that falling branch, or run from the angry boar, or decided against that tempting berry, you wouldn't be here to listen to this. So thank them. And then sleep, knowing that the path to survival isn't always clear. But we keep walking anyway. Chapter 2: Curiosity and Poison: The Dangers of Eating the Unknown. Imagine standing in the wild, hungry, with nothing but your instincts to guide you. Early humans had no grocery stores, no food labels, no guidance on what to eat. The plants around them could be life-saving or deadly. And without knowing the difference, they had to rely on trial and error. Early humans learned quickly, and often painfully, what could kill them and what could sustain them. Plants, berries, and mushrooms were food sources, but they were also risks. Some berries, like deadly nightshade, looked harmless but were filled with toxins. Hemlock was another deadly plant early humans might have encountered. These were poisonous, and early humans learned the hard way which plants would kill and which would nourish. Their survival depended on these lessons passed down through generations. Not all poisons were obvious. Some plants, like yew trees, had edible parts, but their berries and seeds contained deadly toxins. The poison didn't act immediately. It could take hours or even days to take effect. Early humans had to be cautious with everything they ate. One wrong bite could lead to death. That's why every tribe had its own set of warnings. Don't eat the bright berries. Stay away from that plant. Roots, too, could be dangerous. A seemingly innocent root could cause severe stomach issues, or worse if consumed incorrectly. For example, wild garlic could be toxic unless prepared properly. Cooking or boiling some foods, like certain tubers, neutralize toxins. Early humans had to figure out the safe way to prepare plants. If they didn't, they risked poisoning themselves or the entire group. It was a constant trial and error. But it wasn't just plants. Water could be just as deadly. Streams and rivers could carry bacteria that made people sick. Giardia, a parasite found in untreated water, was common. Without knowledge of proper water purification, early humans would drink from these sources and risk illness. As they lived close to nature, survival depended on learning which waters were safe to drink. The environment posed risks, too. Early humans had no knowledge of diseases carried by animals or insects. A simple scratch or bite from a wild animal could become infected. In fact, some of the first humans may have died from bacterial infections or sepsis after small injuries. They didn't have antiseptics or modern medicine. It was all about surviving long enough to pass on the lessons. As humans evolved, they learned which plants were edible and which were poisonous. Some plants, like willow bark, were used as natural painkillers because they contained salicylic acid, the same ingredient in modern aspirin. Early humans had no idea about the science behind it, but they knew it worked. But even beneficial plants could kill if used wrongly, showing how essential it was to learn from past mistakes. The role of the elder in prehistoric societies was critical. They passed down the knowledge of what plants to eat, which mushrooms were safe, and which water sources to avoid. This knowledge wasn't written. It was passed through storytelling, gestures, and warnings. They taught younger generations which foods could kill and which were safe. It was a dangerous game of survival, where each mistake meant learning something vital. Food wasn't just about survival, it was also about energy. Early humans relied on the wild for everything. For example, hunting for meat wasn't always successful. The animals could run fast, or worse, attack back. So gathering plants was essential. But even a seemingly simple plant, like wild carrots, could cause problems. Early humans had to master the art of both hunting and foraging to stay alive in this unforgiving world. The ability to distinguish between edible and poisonous plants was a key skill that kept humans alive. Over generations, they learned which berries, roots, and mushrooms could sustain them. But they also learned to trust their instincts. They figured out what worked and what didn't, and shared that knowledge across tribes. The risk of death was always present, but so was the drive to survive and evolve. Chapter 3: Falls and Cliffs, when one step meant the end. In the prehistoric world, danger wasn't always something you could see coming. One step too far could be your last. Early humans lived in a world filled with steep cliffs, rocky hills, and uneven terrain. There were no paved roads, no markers, just the harsh, rugged landscape that could change in an instant. A wrong move while climbing, hunting, or even walking could end in a fatal fall. The fear of falling wasn't just something people imagined, it was real. Early humans didn't have safety equipment or proper footwear. They were barefoot, with only their instincts to guide them. Every rock could be slippery, every ledge a potential death trap. And the world wasn't always forgiving when gravity took hold. In fact, high-altitude falls were one of the most common causes of death for early humans. Cliffs and ledges were everywhere, along rivers, in forests, and on the mountainsides where people foraged for food. Falling from such heights wasn't just painful, it was often fatal. A simple slip could leave someone unable to stand or worse, seriously injured and vulnerable to predators. Hunting was one of the most dangerous activities for early humans. Chasing animals through rough terrain meant running up hills, scrambling across loose rocks, and sometimes chasing prey right to the edge of a cliff. Imagine being in a pursuit, adrenaline pumping, and suddenly finding yourself standing at the edge of a drop. The risk of falling was constant, and if the hunter lost their footing, it meant a quick and often deadly end. For those who lived in caves, cave falls posed another risk. Prehistoric caves were not the cozy shelters we imagine today. The interiors could be dark, wet, and uneven, with slippery surfaces and hidden holes. One wrong step could send someone tumbling down a jagged slope or into an unseen pit. And without proper lighting or equipment, rescue was nearly impossible. But the most dangerous falls were often the ones that happened in the middle of the night. Imagine waking up in the dark, disoriented and groggy. Your senses were still adjusting, and the ground beneath you wasn't steady. Falls during the night were common, whether from cliffs, rocks, or uneven caves. In the worst-case scenario, a fall could leave you injured and with no way to get back up. In a world with no hospitals, no bandages, and no way to care for serious injuries, falls often led to more than just broken bones. Infections from open wounds were a common cause of death, Early humans had no antibiotics. A small cut, if left untreated, could quickly turn into something much worse. The fall wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of suffering. Every person had to be vigilant. Even the children were taught to stay clear of dangerous areas, but curiosity often led them to test their limits. It wasn't uncommon for them to wander too close to a cliff or play too near an unstable ledge. Parents and elders had to be constantly alert to protect their young from the dangers of the terrain. The fear of falling wasn't just physical, it was psychological too. Imagine knowing that your next step could be your last. The constant awareness, the mental toll of knowing that the landscape could kill you at any moment. It was a reality early humans had to live with every day. It was this awareness of danger that kept them moving with caution and wisdom, learning to avoid risky situations and recognizing dangerous terrain. Eventually, the knowledge of how to survive such dangers became part of every tribe's survival tactics. They knew the safest paths, the most dangerous cliffs, and the areas that could swallow a person whole. Legends and stories were passed down about the dangers of falls, warning the younger generation not to make the same mistakes. Those who didn't heed the warnings were often the ones who didn't make it. Chapter 4: The Risk of Water. Rivers, lakes, and the ones who didn't come back. Water is life, but it can also be death. Early humans, like all creatures, needed water to survive. But rivers and lakes, while essential, were also treacherous. The currents were unpredictable, the water often murky, and the dangers lurking beneath the surface were unknown. One wrong step, one misjudged swim, and a person could be lost forever. In prehistoric times, people didn't have boats or proper tools for crossing bodies of water. They had to wade through rivers, sometimes diving in with only their instincts guiding them. Drowning was an ever-present danger, especially when trying to cross fast-moving water or when venturing too far from the safety of land. The risk wasn't just in crossing, but in getting water itself. Drinking from a river could be deadly if the water was contaminated. Infections from parasites like Giardia could easily spread, leading to stomach illnesses or worse. Early humans didn't have the knowledge to filter or purify water, so drinking from the wrong source could mean death, slowly and painfully. In the wild, there were dangers lurking beneath the surface. Crocodiles, snakes, and other predators would inhabit many rivers and lakes, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Hippos and large fish, though less common, also posed threats to the unsuspecting. Swimming or wading in these waters was often a gamble between thirst and survival. Sometimes, rivers weren't just a source of water. They were the reason a tribe stayed alive. But the same river could flood, taking away homes, sweeping people downstream, or eroding the land. A river that had once provided for them could suddenly turn against them, drowning those who ventured too close. It was the balance of life and death. So, water was never just a blessing. It was a constant reminder of how fragile life was. The early humans who survived learned to respect rivers and lakes. They knew where the safest water sources were. They knew which streams were clear and drinkable. But those who didn't learn these lessons quickly enough didn't make it. And so, water became a lesson passed down through the ages. Chapter 5: Fire was a miracle until it wasn't. Imagine it. The flickering light of fire in the darkness, casting shadows on the stone walls of a cave. For early humans, fire was nothing short of a miracle. It wasn't just a tool. It was protection from the cold, a weapon against predators, and a lifeline in a world filled with danger. It was a force that kept the night at bay, allowing early humans to rest, cook, and even create. Without fire, survival would have been nearly impossible. But fire wasn't just a blessing. It was dangerous and unpredictable. It could save your life, but it could just as easily end it. Early humans didn't have the luxury of fireplaces or modern tools. They had flint, stones, and dry kindling to spark the flame. But one wrong move, one flick of wind, and the fire could turn on them, burning everything in its path. What was once a symbol of comfort could quickly become an uncontrollable beast. Early humans learned to control fire, but it wasn't perfect. Campfires weren't always safe. When the fire got out of control, it could turn into a devastating force, burning homes, forests, and even people. Imagine living in a world where every spark could cause a wildfire. The risk was high, but fire still represented the difference between life and death. That delicate balance between safety and destruction shaped the way humans interacted with it. But fire wasn't just life-saving. It was also a symbol of power. Tribes who controlled fire had a massive advantage. Cooking food over fire made it safer and more nutritious. It also helped early humans keep predators at bay. But sometimes, fire could be an unpredictable ally. A small ember from a campfire could spread rapidly, consuming everything. The very thing that made survival easier could also burn an entire tribe in the blink of an eye. Fire wasn't just a tool for heating food. It was used to create tools and weapons. Flint knapping, for example, involved heating rocks to make them easier to shape into sharp edges. But once again, the danger of fire loomed. If the flames got too hot or the rocks cracked unexpectedly, early humans risked severe burns or injury. Fire had power, but it needed to be handled with the utmost care. As time passed, fire became integral to early human survival. They didn't just learn how to use it, they learned to respect it. Fires were banked, kept alive through the night, and tended to with constant vigilance. A fire was more than just a tool, it was a companion. But with that companionship came the knowledge that fire wasn't always your friend. It could warm you, cook your food, and light your way. But if left unchecked, it could take everything you held dear. Chapter 6. Sleeping Without Caution. What happened when they let their guard down? In the prehistoric world, sleep wasn't a peaceful retreat like it is today. Sleep was a vulnerable moment, a time when early humans had to let their guard down. Imagine trying to sleep in a world full of dangers, predators, harsh weather, and the constant threat of injury. Early humans didn't have beds, blankets, or comfortable pillows. They had to sleep on the cold ground, with only the warmth of their fire and the safety of their tribe to protect them. The night was full of hidden threats. Lions, wolves, and bears didn't care about your need for rest. When the sun set, it wasn't just time for sleep. It was time for survival. Early humans slept in groups, often huddled together for warmth and protection. The idea of a private bed was unheard of. Instead, everyone slept in close quarters, because the closer you were, the safer you were from the predators that prowled in the dark. But sleeping in groups had its risks. A sleeping human was an easy target. Predators like wolves knew how to attack vulnerable groups. If the tribe wasn't careful, one wrong move, a shift in position, a noise in the dark, could lead to disaster. Sleep wasn't just a matter of resting. It was about staying alert enough to react to any threat, even in your sleep. Caves were often the safest place to sleep, but they weren't foolproof. Some caves were home to predators, like bears or even hyenas. These animals might decide that humans were easy prey, and in the dead of night, when everyone was asleep, a sudden attack could occur. Sleeping in caves required vigilance and knowledge of the environment. Even the smallest disturbance could signal a dangerous intruder, but the worst danger wasn't always predators. In many places, the elements could turn against you at any moment. A flood, a storm, or a sudden drop in temperature could mean death during the night. Without shelters to protect them from the rain or wind, early humans had to rely on their instincts and experience to choose the safest spots to sleep. A wrong choice could leave them exposed, vulnerable, and at the mercy of the environment. Despite all the dangers, sleep was necessary. It was a critical part of survival, giving early humans the energy they needed to hunt, gather, and fight the next day. But it was never easy. Each night was a reminder that survival didn't just happen. It was earned. Through awareness, vigilance, and the constant fight against the dangers of the wild. Sleep was a blessing, yes, but it was also a risk that had to be carefully navigated. Chapter 7. Animal Encounters Gone Wrong. When the hunt backfired. Hunting was a necessity for survival, but it was also one of the most dangerous activities early humans faced. Armed with little more than stone tools, spears, and bows, they ventured into wild territories filled with predators. The prey they hunted was often just as dangerous, and the risk of encountering a wild animal that could fight back was a constant threat. Hunting wasn't just about strategy. It was about timing and precision. The wrong move could lead to a dangerous encounter with a predator. A boar, bison, or even a wolf could turn the tables in an instant, turning a hunter into prey. These animals weren't passive. When cornered, they would fight back fiercely. And early humans, despite their bravery, were no match for the strength and speed of these creatures. One wrong strike, and the outcome could be deadly. For example, a hunter may have thrown a spear at a charging bison, but if the spear missed, the animal would retaliate with tremendous force. A single charge from a bison could send a human flying, or even crush bones with a well-aimed strike. Imagine trying to defend yourself with nothing but a flimsy spear, while a massive animal came barreling at you. But it wasn't just large animals that posed risks. Even smaller predators like wildcats or foxes could turn a hunt into a disaster. Early humans had to be on constant alert, watching for the signs of danger. Traps were set for smaller game, but sometimes the trap itself would backfire. A wild animal caught in a trap would thrash and struggle, sometimes dragging the hunter into the chaos. A wild boar caught in a snare could easily turn on the hunter, injuring them or worse. The danger wasn't always from the animal's strength. Sometimes it was the unexpected that turned a hunt into disaster. A mistaken identity, a wrong step, or an unplanned attack could lead to death. A hunter might be focused on tracking one animal, only for a bear or predator to come up from behind and surprise them. Early humans didn't have the technology to predict or counter these surprises. They could only react, and sometimes that wasn't enough. In the end, hunting was a delicate balance between bravery and caution. It was about knowing your prey, knowing the land, and knowing how to handle unexpected danger. The early humans who survived the longest were those who learned from their mistakes. Their stories of failed hunts and dangerous encounters became lessons for future generations. Because in a world of wild animals and unknown risks, survival wasn't guaranteed, it was earned. Chapter 8. The Dangers of Resting in the Wrong Place. Early humans didn't have comfortable beds, houses, or hotels to retreat to after a long day. Instead, they slept wherever they could find shelter, under trees, in caves, or simply out in the open. But every resting spot came with hidden dangers. The wrong choice could lead to death, injury, or worse. Where you rested was just as important as what you ate or how you hunted. One of the greatest dangers early humans faced when resting was the environment itself. Sleeping on the ground exposed them to the elements, the cold, the rain, the wind, and the wild animals. Resting near a river, for example, might seem safe, but a sudden flood could sweep a sleeping human away. Caves, while protective, could be home to predators who sought shelter there too. Bears or wolves might take up residence in the very caves early humans considered safe. Then, there was the risk of wild animals. Early humans often had to sleep in areas where predators roamed. A cave might look like the perfect place to rest, but it could also hide a sleeping bear or a pack of wolves. Sleeping near a fire helped keep predators away, but it didn't guarantee safety. Even the warmth of the fire couldn't protect early humans from the dangers of wild creatures sneaking too close. But it wasn't just predators that early humans had to watch out for. The weather could also be deadly. Freezing temperatures at night could lead to hypothermia, especially if humans were too far from their fire or too far from shelter. It didn't matter how well they hunted or gathered during the day. If they rested in the wrong place, the cold could be the thing that killed them, slowly, while they slept. Even the ground itself was a danger. Uneven terrain meant that one wrong step could cause injury. Early humans didn't have the luxury of sleeping on soft beds. They often rested on hard, uneven ground, sometimes surrounded by rocks and thorns. A twisted ankle or a painful injury from lying on a sharp stone could be the difference between survival and death. The risk of falling or getting hurt in the night was a constant concern. Ultimately, early humans learned where to rest based on the dangers they faced. They learned to sleep in groups, to rest near firelight, and to avoid high-risk areas. They learned to recognize the safest spots, the places that gave them protection from the cold, from predators, and from the dangers of nature itself. Where you rested could be the difference between waking up to see another day or being taken by the very environment you depended on. Chapter 9: Snakes, Insects, and the Hidden Threats in Nature. Imagine strolling through a beautiful prehistoric forest, the sun warming your skin, birds chirping in the trees. All seems peaceful, right? But what if I told you that everything you just stepped over, walked past, or leaned on could kill you? In early human life, the forest wasn't just filled with fresh air and wildlife. It was also a dangerous minefield of venomous creatures, parasites, and predators just waiting for the chance to ruin your day. Let's talk snakes. Sure, they may look cool and slither like they own the place, but these guys weren't just wildlife. They were serious business. Early humans didn't have sneakers or sturdy boots to protect their ankles. Venomous snakes were lurking underfoot, in the grass, or even hanging out in the trees. And they didn't have a warning sign like a neon sign flashing "Don't step here." And the threat didn't end with snakes. Early humans also had to deal with insects. Mosquitoes were a nightmare, and they carried diseases like malaria. They didn't have bug spray or nets. Ticks were just as bad. Latching onto them, they would spread infections that could weaken or kill. The worst part? Early humans didn't even know what was happening until it was too late. Then there were the parasites. Lice and fleas were everywhere. Early humans had no soap, no clean water, and no way to remove them. These pests carried diseases and made life even more miserable. Picture being stuck in the wilderness, trying to rest but constantly itching and battling creatures that thrived on you. It was a constant struggle to survive. Spiders weren't any better. The prehistoric world had some huge spiders, not the friendly garden types. Imagine hunting for food and then finding yourself face to face with a massive spider that could paralyze you with a bite. It wasn't just the big predators. It was everything in the wild that posed a hidden threat, often in the most unexpected places. Despite all these threats, early humans adapted. They built shelters off the ground, used herbs to repel insects, and learned to avoid dangerous areas. They became experts at survival by staying alert and passing down survival knowledge through generations. Each day was a gamble, but they kept pushing forward. Because in the wild, survival was about staying aware and learning from each encounter. Chapter 10: Cave Collapses and Trapped Lives. Caves were often the safest place for early humans to rest, offering protection from the elements and predators. But these natural shelters weren't always as safe as they seemed. The dark, damp interiors of caves could hide many dangers. Rocks could fall at any moment, and a small tremor could send massive boulders crashing down. A good night's sleep in a cave could quickly turn into a deadly disaster. Cave collapses were one of the most dangerous risks early humans faced. A few missteps in the wrong area of a cave could trigger a landslide, sending rocks tumbling down and trapping anyone inside. Imagine being in complete darkness, with only the faint glow of your fire, and suddenly, the ground beneath you shakes. You can't see the rocks coming, and before you know it, you're stuck, and there's no one around to help. In prehistoric times, caves weren't just places to sleep. They were also used for storing food, tools, and other valuable items, but this made them even more dangerous. Storing food near an unstable area in a cave could bring added risk. One accidental move could bring down the entire pile of rocks, trapping the tribe's supplies, and their only chance of survival. Even the most cautious humans couldn't always avoid danger in a cave. Falling rocks were unpredictable. Some caves were naturally unstable. Over time, erosion or the weather could weaken the structure, making it prone to collapse. A small earthquake, or even the weight of gathered snow on the cave's roof could trigger a fatal cave-in. There was no warning, no way to predict when disaster would strike. Being trapped in a cave wasn't just about injury. If you were caught, it could mean death by suffocation, exposure, or dehydration. In the ancient world, there were no rescue teams, no modern tools to clear debris. If someone got trapped in a cave, the chances of survival were slim. The longer they stayed trapped, the more difficult it became to escape. It was a race against time. But not all cave accidents were fatal. Some survivors did manage to escape, learning from the experience. Over time, early humans learned to choose safer caves, to stay away from areas with loose rocks, and to always keep watchful eyes on the environment. They passed this knowledge down, ensuring that the next generation would have a better understanding of the risks. And so, the survival stories of those who survived became a lesson for those to come. Chapter 11: Freezing Nights and the Misjudgment of Weather. Imagine a freezing night, the air biting at your skin, and the wind howling through the trees. Early humans faced this every winter. Without modern clothing or shelters, they were exposed to the elements in a way we can barely comprehend. The danger wasn't just the cold itself, but the unpredictability of the weather. A sudden drop in temperature could turn an ordinary night into a life-threatening situation. Early humans didn't have the luxury of weather forecasts. They had to rely on the natural world to give them clues: the temperature, the wind, the feel of the air. But those clues weren't always accurate. A clear night sky could lead to a sudden drop in temperature, catching them off guard. What seemed like a peaceful evening could turn into a night of survival, with cold that cut through even the thickest of clothes. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was deadly. Early humans didn't have insulated homes. They slept around fires, in caves, or under simple shelters. If they misjudged the weather, a freezing night could lead to hypothermia, frostbite, or even death. In some cases, entire tribes could perish from a cold snap that came without warning. Those who survived learned to be constantly vigilant, even during the warmer months. But surviving the cold wasn't just about bundling up. It was about how they used fire to stay warm. Early humans had to keep their fires going through the night. If the fire went out, they risked freezing. But maintaining fire wasn't easy. They didn't have modern fuel sources. They relied on wood, which could get wet, damp, or even burn out too quickly. A cold night without a fire could quickly become a fight for survival. Sudden storms or heavy snowfall could trap early humans. They had no shelters built for snow. A snowstorm could blanket the forest and make food and water difficult to find. Being caught outside during such conditions was almost a death sentence. The risk of freezing was high, but the real danger came when early humans had to travel in bad weather, often unable to judge how bad the conditions had become. Over time, early humans learned to predict the weather by reading the signs around them, the movement of animals, the direction of the wind, and changes in the atmosphere. But misjudging the weather still posed a significant threat. One wrong decision could lead to disaster. Survival meant learning from every storm, every freezing night, and passing that knowledge down to the next generation. Chapter 12: Trampled by Herds: How Curiosity Led to Fatal Mistakes. Imagine you're hunting or foraging, and you wander too close to a massive herd of wild bison, deer, or even mammoths. To early humans, these animals were both a source of food and a potential danger. But sometimes, curiosity or a misstep could turn a peaceful observation into a life-threatening situation. A single wrong move, and you could be caught in the middle of a panicked stampede. Large animals like bison were deceptively fast and powerful. When startled, they could charge at incredible speed. Early humans didn't have the safety of modern barriers or vehicles. They would hunt or move through the wilderness, unaware that a sudden noise or movement could set off a herd's flight response. The stampede that followed could mean devastating injury or even death for anyone caught in its path. Curiosity made early humans vulnerable. The young, eager to explore, might have wandered too close to a herd. Thinking it was safe to observe, they didn't realize that even the most peaceful-looking animals could become dangerous. Once the herd moved, it was often too late to escape. The powerful animals ran in all directions, crushing everything in their path, and the human caught in the middle didn't stand a chance. The real danger was the risk of being trampled. Early humans didn't have modern protection. No armor, no shields. A stampede of wild animals like bison could easily crush a human underfoot. The massive weight and speed of these creatures were more than any human body could withstand. The result could be broken bones, internal injuries, or worse, death. A simple mistake could cost a life. Even when trying to move away from the herd, the risk remained. Startled animals, especially separated ones, could charge unexpectedly. Predators like wolves also followed herds, looking for weak or straggling prey. Early humans, in an effort to avoid both, often found themselves stuck between dangerous herds and even more dangerous predators. In those moments, survival came down to quick thinking, a skill that could save their lives. With time, early humans learned to be strategic around herds. They stayed on the outskirts and avoided sudden movements. The key wasn't always strength, but caution and wisdom. The right choice meant survival. The wrong one, a life lost in the chaos of a stampede. The dangerous encounters with animals weren't just about bravery. They were about learning when to move forward and when to back off. Chapter 13. Infections and injuries that should have been small. In prehistoric times, every small injury was a potential death sentence. Early humans didn't have antiseptics, bandages, or modern medicine. A simple cut, scratch, or bruise could quickly turn into something much worse. Infections spread fast, and without proper treatment, even the smallest wound could lead to sepsis or death. Early humans didn't have the knowledge we have today about germs or bacteria. If someone got a scratch while hunting or gathering, it could become infected. Parasites like lice and fleas were common, and they carried diseases. A bite or scratch from an infected animal could also trigger infections that would eventually take the life of the victim. Imagine a simple injury, like a cut on the arm. Early humans didn't have modern tools to clean it. They might have used saliva, dirt, or even water from nearby streams to clean the wound. But if the wound wasn't cleaned properly, it became a breeding ground for bacteria. With no antibiotics to stop the infection, it could spread quickly, making the victim weaker each day. In some cases, the wound might have been deep, like a pierced foot or a broken bone. Early humans didn't have the luxury of hospitals or medical care. So, they had to rely on natural remedies and the wisdom passed down from elders. But even with the best remedies, infections from untreated wounds often became fatal, especially when the wound wasn't treated fast enough. Early humans didn't have painkillers either. They had to endure pain while their bodies fought off the infection. And when the infection spread to the bloodstream, it was often too late. Those who survived these injuries passed on their survival stories to the younger generation, teaching them how to avoid dangerous situations and, hopefully, prevent infections from getting worse. Survival meant learning how to handle small injuries before they became life-threatening. Early humans adapted, using everything around them to keep their bodies intact. They relied on natural healing plants, animal fats, and heat to try and stop infections. Over time, this knowledge became vital for the survival of the tribe, because in their world, even a small scratch could mean the end. Chapter 14. Strange plants, hallucinations, and their deadly outcomes. Early humans relied on the plants around them for food, medicine, and tools. But some plants, despite appearing harmless, were filled with toxins that could turn a simple meal or remedy into a nightmare. Some plants were used in rituals or to ease pain, but the risks were high. A single wrong choice could lead to hallucinations, poisoning, or even death. One famous example is the deadly nightshade, also known as belladonna. Early humans might have used this plant for its hallucinogenic properties, thinking it could provide visions or aid in rituals. But belladonna is a toxic plant that can cause severe illness or death if ingested. Early humans would have learned, through painful trial and error, to avoid this dangerous plant, but only after many had suffered. Some plants had medicinal uses, but if prepared incorrectly, they could become poisonous. For example, wild garlic, used for its healing properties, could be toxic if not prepared right. Early humans had to understand which plants were safe to eat and which ones could cause their bodies to react badly. Ingestion of the wrong plants could lead to nausea, vomiting, or even paralysis. The ability to distinguish between safe and dangerous plants was critical. Mushrooms, for instance, could be both a delicious snack and a deadly poison. Some mushrooms contain toxins that attack the liver, causing death in a matter of hours. Early humans learned which mushrooms were edible and which ones had fatal consequences by trial, passing this knowledge down to future generations. But the hallucinogenic plants were often a trickier situation. Psychedelic plants like ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms were used in early human rituals. They might have been consumed to induce visions or communicate with the spirits. However, these plants could disorient the mind, leading to dangerous actions. Hallucinations could cause someone to act recklessly, leading them to injure themselves or make fatal mistakes. Despite the dangers, early humans developed a deep understanding of the plants around them. Knowledge of plants became a crucial part of their survival. They learned what to eat, what to avoid, and what to use for medicine. The wrong plant could kill you, but the right plant could help you survive, heal, or even thrive. Over time, their stories and warnings about toxic plants became legends passed down through the ages. Chapter 15: Clothing and Scents that Attracted the Wrong Attention. In prehistoric times, early humans didn't have the luxury of modern fabrics or fancy clothing. They used animal skins and leaves to protect themselves from the harsh environment. But the same clothing that kept them warm and safe also carried a danger: scent. The smell of blood or animal pelts could attract predators, or worse, rival human tribes. Imagine walking through the forest, wearing a deer pelt or bear skin. The smell of the animal's blood could be detected by predators from miles away. Wolves, bears, and other carnivores could follow the scent straight to the hunter. This meant that early humans had to be careful where they stored or wore their clothing, as the scent could literally be a beacon for danger. But it wasn't just the scent of blood that was dangerous. Early humans often had to wear their animal pelts for warmth, but this could trap the smell of sweat, food, and fire as well. When these scents mixed with the strong smell of the skin itself, it could draw the attention of both predators and humans alike. What was once a protective garment could become a warning signal to others. And then there was the smell of cooking. Early humans didn't have sealed containers or modern cooking appliances. They cooked food over an open fire. The smell of roasting meat or boiling berries could easily travel through the air, attracting both wild animals and other human tribes. While cooking was essential for survival, it also came with a hidden risk: the possibility of being tracked by a hungry predator or a hostile tribe. In some cases, human scent was just as dangerous. Sweat, bodily odor, and even the oils from their skin could be detected by animals. A strong scent of humans could warn predators that an easy meal was nearby, or it could reveal their presence to another tribe. Early humans had to be aware of how their scent could affect their safety. Stealth was a key factor in survival, and the wrong smell at the wrong time could end it all. Over time, early humans learned to adapt. They learned to avoid wearing freshly killed skins for too long, and they used natural herbs to mask their scent. Burning certain woods could help mask human odor, and using smoke might keep predators away. They also learned to wash in rivers or streams, not just to clean themselves, but to remove any lingering smells that could give them away. Every detail mattered in the fight for survival. Chapter 16: When Someone Got Left Behind Without Fire. Fire wasn't just a tool for warmth. It was the heart of survival for early humans. Without it, they were vulnerable to the cold, to predators, and to the dark. Fire provided light, warmth, and a means to cook food. But what happened if you were left behind without it? In prehistoric times, being separated from the group without fire meant certain death for many. Imagine wandering too far from your tribe's fire during the night. You find yourself surrounded by the darkness, with nothing to keep you warm. The cold in the wild can be unforgiving, and without a fire, hypothermia becomes a real threat. Early humans didn't have cozy blankets or insulated homes. Fire was the only thing that kept them from freezing to death in the wilderness. But it wasn't just the cold that made being separated from the fire dangerous. Early humans didn't have the luxury of a modern shelter. If left alone, they were easy targets for predators. Wolves, lions, and even bears would be attracted to the vulnerable human, and without fire to scare them off, the risk was high. The smell of a lone human in the wilderness could attract anything lurking in the dark. Fire also served another critical purpose: protection. Early humans would often sleep around the fire to stay warm, and it acted as a barrier to wild animals. Without it, they risked being ambushed in their sleep. Imagine the fear of waking up alone in the dark, unable to see anything but hear the sounds of rustling in the bushes. Without the glow of fire, survival was all but impossible. Losing the fire also meant losing the ability to cook food. Early humans didn't have access to modern food storage or refrigeration. They had to hunt and eat what they could catch. Raw food posed a significant health risk. Without fire, early humans would have had to eat raw meat, which could lead to parasites and disease. Fire made food safer to eat and more nutritious. Without it, they risked foodborne illness. Survival stories from early humans often involve moments when someone was left behind. Tribes learned the importance of staying together and the dangers of straying too far from the fire. Over time, people learned to carry embers from one camp to another and keep the fire alive. Fire wasn't just a source of warmth, it was life. Without it, you were at the mercy of the wilderness, and the wilderness didn't care about your survival. Chapter 17: Unstable Ground and Fatal Rock Slides. The earth beneath early humans was both a lifeline and a constant threat. Early humans didn't have paved roads or flat surfaces to walk on. The ground was uneven, filled with loose rocks, unstable slopes, and treacherous terrain. One wrong step or a sudden shift in the ground could send someone tumbling into the abyss. Rock slides and falls were common causes of injury and death. Mountains, cliffs, and hills were part of daily life for early humans. But these towering structures, while offering protection and resources, were also incredibly dangerous. Loose rocks were everywhere. A boulder could easily come loose with the wrong amount of pressure, sending it crashing down. Rock slides could trap early humans in an avalanche of stone. One small mistake, and an entire group could be crushed beneath tons of earth and rock. Rock slides weren't just caused by human activity. Sometimes, they happened naturally. Rain, wind, or even earthquakes could loosen the earth. The ground itself was unstable, and early humans were always at risk of a sudden landslide. These disasters could occur without warning, and once the rocks started moving, there was little anyone could do to avoid them. The speed and force of a rock slide were deadly. In the wild, being near unstable ground didn't just mean risking falls. If early humans had to cross rocky hills or climb cliffs, a slip could result in broken bones, or worse. With no hospitals or ways to treat serious injuries, a fall could easily lead to infection or death. Even a simple stumble could end in a fatal accident, especially when surrounded by rugged terrain. But rock slides and unstable ground weren't just an issue when climbing or walking. Caves and other natural shelters could collapse without warning. A shift in the ground beneath a cave could cause a cave-in, trapping early humans inside. In those cases, the only hope for survival was the ability to escape or get help quickly. But in the wild, help wasn't always available. Over time, early humans learned to recognize the signs of instability in the ground. They became skilled at choosing paths that were less likely to lead to rock slides. But despite all their caution, the earth remained unpredictable. It was a reminder that the landscape itself could kill, no matter how carefully you tread. Every day was a delicate balance between survival and the unstable world beneath their feet. Chapter 18. When the prey fought back and won. Early humans were hunters, gathering their food from the wild. But hunting was no easy task, especially when the prey decided to fight back. Imagine stalking a wild boar or a bison, thinking you have it in your sights, only for it to charge straight at you. The tables could turn quickly, and what was meant to be dinner could easily become your last meal. Large animals like bison and boar weren't just food, they were formidable opponents. Early humans didn't have guns or bows with long-range capabilities. They used spears and stone tools, which required them to get close to their prey. In a world where speed and power ruled, a boar could charge with terrifying force, capable of knocking over a human with a single blow. A wounded animal was even more dangerous. When animals like boars or bison were injured, they became aggressive and unpredictable. In the heat of the hunt, an early human might have struck an animal, only to have it turn on them. A boar's tusks or the hooves of a bison could easily cause serious injury. A wrong step or a miscalculation could lead to a deadly encounter. Sometimes, it wasn't just strength that made the prey dangerous. Certain animals, like crocodiles or snakes, relied on stealth and surprise. Early humans, not having modern tools to track these silent hunters, could easily fall victim to a sudden attack. The danger wasn't just about fighting. It was about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and having no warning. Even smaller animals like wildcats or wolves were capable of overpowering early humans. When hunting in packs, wolves were incredibly efficient, working together to take down larger prey. In the same way, early humans sometimes found themselves outnumbered and overpowered. A small group of humans, even armed with tools, could find themselves at the mercy of a coordinated animal attack. Through these dangerous encounters, early humans learned to respect their prey. Over time, they developed hunting strategies, working in teams to ensure safety and increase their chances of success. They became adapted to reading animal behavior, knowing when to strike and when to retreat. But the memory of those who fell during hunts became stories of caution, reminding future generations that prey can fight back. Chapter 19. Accidents during games, jokes, or curiosity. In the prehistoric world, survival wasn't all about hunting and gathering. Early humans had moments of leisure, playing games, telling stories, and sharing laughter around the fire. But these moments were often fraught with danger. A simple joke, a curious exploration, or a playful game could end in disaster. Life was full of risks, and even the most innocent activities could take a dangerous turn. Imagine this: a group of early humans gathered around a fire, laughing, sharing tales of the hunt. One might decide to entertain the group with a little joke or a trick. But in a world without safety, what seemed like harmless fun could quickly escalate. A loud noise, a sudden movement, or an unexpected action could trigger a response from the wild animals nearby or cause a panic within the group. Games were another source of both joy and risk. Early humans likely engaged in simple activities like races, tug-of-war, or even mock battles to build strength and practice skills. But the very act of play often involved rough movements or sharp tools. A misstep during a playful game could result in injuries. A misplaced spear, a trip over an unseen rock, or a fall could lead to serious damage, especially with no way to treat injuries. Curiosity, too, had its risks. Early humans were explorers by nature, always seeking new areas to hunt, gather, or simply discover. But sometimes that curiosity led them into dangerous situations. Wandering too far from the tribe, Picking up unfamiliar plants, or getting too close to a sleeping predator were all examples of how a small lapse in judgment could become fatal. Even pranks could have deadly consequences. Imagine an early human playing a joke on a friend, perhaps pretending to chase them or startle them. But what if that sudden movement startled a nearby predator? A group of wolves could have been nearby, triggered by the unexpected noise and movement, ready to attack. In a world where anything could trigger a reaction, even playful behavior could quickly lead to a deadly encounter. Despite the dangers, play and curiosity were essential for early human survival. They allowed early humans to bond, share knowledge, and develop skills. The physical games taught them how to run, climb, and fight. But these moments of fun and laughter also served as a reminder. Life was fragile, and one wrong move could change everything. Survival wasn't just about staying alive. It was about making it through each day without letting curiosity or fun turn into a deadly mistake. Chapter 20. Everything that went wrong before we knew what we were doing. Before early humans mastered the art of survival, they made countless mistakes. From hunting to shelter building, they were constantly learning through trial and error. There was no manual on how to survive in the wild. Everything they did was an experiment, and sometimes it didn't go as planned. Imagine setting out to catch food and ending up hungry and injured, simply because they didn't know what they were doing. Hunting, for example, wasn't a precise science back then. Early humans had to develop their tools, like spears and stone knives, but those tools didn't always work as intended. Missing a shot at a boar or bison could mean wasting hours of work and possibly risking injury. A failed hunt didn't just mean going hungry. It could mean falling behind in the race for survival. Then there was the struggle of shelter building. In the early days, humans used whatever they could find, leaves, branches, animal skins, to create makeshift shelters. But not every shelter was safe. A poorly built shelter could collapse during a storm, leaving its inhabitants exposed. Even if they found a cave, they couldn't always guarantee that it was free of predators, who also saw caves as a safe space. Mistakes weren't just physical. There were plenty of unseen dangers. Unfamiliar plants might look like a delicious treat, but without knowing which ones were poisonous, early humans might consume something that made them sick or worse. And animal behavior was another area of confusion. What seemed like a friendly animal could turn aggressive without warning, and misjudging an animal's reaction could lead to a dangerous situation. And let's not forget about fire. While it was a revolutionary tool, early humans didn't always know how to control it. A small spark could turn into a massive wildfire if they weren't careful. There were no fire trucks or modern fire safety techniques, just humans doing their best to keep the flames under control. If the fire got out of hand, it could destroy everything they had worked for. But these mistakes weren't always in vain. They were part of the learning process. Early humans didn't have written guides, but they passed down stories of failed hunts, disastrous fires, and poisonous plants. These mistakes became lessons for future generations. Over time, they learned to adapt, creating better tools, smarter shelters, and safer methods of gathering food. Trial and error was the foundation of their survival. And that's a wrap for today's journey through the wild, where every step was a test of survival, and every decision could mean life or death. It's incredible to think about how our ancestors faced these unimaginable dangers with nothing but their wits and resilience. If you enjoyed traveling back in time with me, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any future adventures. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think was the most dangerous aspect of early human life? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for the next chapter in our prehistoric saga, don't be shy, drop a line. Thanks for watching Sleepy Primate, where history sleeps and we explore the wild stories that shaped humanity. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and always be alert. After all, you never know what might be lurking in the shadows.